When people think of lions, they imagine control. They imagine a king standing on a rock, mane blowing in the wind, eyes calm like nothing on earth can challenge him. But the savannah has one place where even kings don't look like kings: the river. Because at the river, the rules change. At the river, strength doesn't matter as much as timing. At the river, the ground can vanish under your feet, the water can swallow your legs, and death can come from below without making a sound. And on one dry season afternoon, when the heat made the air shimmer and the grass smelled like dust, a lion learned that lesson the hard way, because when a crocodile attacked him, the entire savannah watched in shock. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to picture the scene the way the animals did. Not like a documentary, like a stadium. The river bend was the only working water source for miles. The smaller pools had dried up weeks ago. The mud pans had turned into cracked plates. Even the acacia shade didn't feel cool anymore. So everything came to the river. Zebras in tight lines, heads high, ears flicking, wildebeest crowding the banks, hooves churning the sand into powder, impala creeping in and freezing every 3 steps, as if the air itself could bite them. And birds, so many birds, standing like nervous judges on the branches, waiting for someone to make a mistake. The hippos were already in the water, blowing and grunting like they owned the place. They always acted like that. Even crocodiles usually gave them space. But the crocodiles were there too. You couldn't see most of them. That was the point. If you stared long enough, you might catch a ripple moving the wrong direction, or a pair of bumps breaking the surface for half a second, or a faint line that looked like driftwood, until it blinked. The guides in the area had a name for the biggest crocodile at that bend. They called him Nyoka. It wasn't his real name, obviously. Crocodiles don't answer to names, but this one needed something bigger than that crocodile. Nyoka was old. You could tell by his skin. Dark, rough, and scarred like a road that had been hit by storms for decades. One eye was cloudy, not blind, just angry looking, like it had seen too much and didn't care anymore. He was the kind of crocodile that didn't waste energy. He didn't snap at every antelope that drank. He waited, because when you're that big, you don't need many meals. You need one. And then the lion showed up. His name, according to the rangers who tracked him, was Sefu, a full-grown male. Not the biggest lion in the region, but heavy and strong, built like he came from a hard life. His mane was thick in the front and thinner near the back, like it had been pulled at too many times. His right shoulder had an old scratch pattern that never fully disappeared. But what made Sefu stand out wasn't his scars, it was the limp. His back left leg didn't land clean, it touched the ground late, like it didn't trust the soil. Every step carried a tiny hesitation, and on the savannah, hesitation has a smell. Animals can sense it. They don't need to understand it. They just feel it. When Sefu appeared from the tall grass, the zebras shifted away. The wildebeest stopped chewing. Even the impalas froze like statues. Because a lion at a river isn't just a lion. A lion at a river means something is about to happen. Behind Sefu, 2 lionesses followed at a distance, not close enough to look like a team, but close enough to show they belonged to him. Their sides were a little hollow, hungry, and there were cubs too, not tiny babies, but old enough to walk and stare and learn. 2 of them. They stayed behind the lionesses, peeking through the grass. Their eyes were wide in the way young animals' eyes always are, like the world is bigger than they expected. The lionesses wanted water. You could see it in the way they kept licking their lips, in the way they looked at the river like it was a treasure. But Sefu wasn't looking at the water, he was looking at the crowd, because the river bend wasn't only a drinking place, it was an opportunity. A wildebeest calf stood too close to the edge, and its mother was distracted, pushing another wildebeest off her space. The calf kept stepping forward, sniffing, then stepping forward again. Sefu saw it, and something in him tightened. This is the part people don't always understand about lions. They don't just attack, they choose, they calculate. They watch the wind, the distance, the angle of escape. Sefu lowered himself slightly, shoulders rolling forward. The limp was still there, but when a lion decides, pain becomes background noise. The lionesses spread a little, like they were ready to help if needed. And the crowd, zebras, wildebeest, everything, leaned away in fear, but also couldn't stop watching, because every animal at that river knew this truth. If a lion hunts here, someone will die. Sefu took 3 silent steps, then 5. He was close enough now that the calf finally sensed danger. It lifted its head, ears twitching, eyes searching. And at that exact second, Sefu lunged. The calf screamed. Its legs kicked sand into the air as it tried to spin away, but Sefu was already there, jaws reaching. It should have been a clean kill. It should have been fast. But the river bank was not flat. It was steep in one spot where the sand had been carved away by weeks of animals coming and going. Sefu's front paw landed on loose ground, and the earth slid. Just a half step. Just enough. Sefu's weight shifted wrong. His limp leg couldn't correct in time, and suddenly the lion wasn't pouncing on a calf. He was sliding down into the water. For a split second it looked almost unreal. A lion, this symbol of land power, dropping into the river like a rock. The water surged around his chest. His front paws thrashed, claws scraping at nothing, and then the surface beside him moved. Not a splash, a rise, like a dark log lifting from below. Noyoka. The crocodile didn't explode forward like a movie monster. He did something worse. He simply opened his jaws under the surface and lifted, and the river seemed to bite the lion. Sefu's roar hit the air so hard it felt like it shook the birds out of the trees. The lionesses snapped their heads toward him. The cubs jerked backward in fear. The wildebeest herd surged away from the bank, trampling sand, screaming, pushing each other, because every wildebeest knew what a crocodile strike meant. It meant you don't get a second chance. Nyoka had Sefu's leg, not the limp leg, the other one, the strong one. The crocodile's jaws clamped down just above the ankle, and the pressure was so crushing that you could see Sefu's whole body tense like a pulled rope. Sefu tried to pull back. He couldn't. Nyoka didn't tug. He didn't drag. He held. Because crocodiles don't win by strength alone. They win by patience and physics. Water helps them. The current helps them. The fact that you can't breathe underwater helps them. Sefu's paws slammed at the water, spraying it into the air like broken glass. He tried to get his footing back on the bank, but the sand gave way under his claws. The lionesses ran to the edge. They stopped, and this was the first shock. Because lionesses can be brave, they can fight hyenas, chase leopards, even stand up to a strange male. But a crocodile in deep water, that's a different fear. You can't bite what you can't reach. You can't claw what you can't see. And if you go in, you might not come out. The lionesses paced the bank, making short, sharp warning sounds. The cubs cried softly behind them, confused, because their world was breaking. Sefu roared again, but this roar had pain inside it. Nyoka began to pull. Not fast, slow, dragging Sefu deeper by inches, like he was collecting a debt. Sefu's head dipped under the surface, then came back up. His eyes were wide now, not with panic exactly, more like disbelief, like he couldn't accept that the river was doing this to him. Sefu tried something smart. He twisted his body sideways, trying to turn the pressure off his leg. He swung his free paw down into the water, reaching for the crocodile's head. His claws scraped along armor-hard scales, leaving white scratch lines that didn't even slow Nyoka. Nyoka didn't react like an animal in pain. He reacted like a machine. He rolled. The death roll is not just spinning. It's tearing. It's what happens when something with jaws locks you and uses its whole body as a lever. The water exploded. Sefu's body whipped around. His roar turned into a choking sound as his face hit the water. The savannah watched. And when I say the savannah watched, I mean it like this. The zebras were standing rigid, facing the river, not drinking anymore. The wildebeest had backed up, but were still staring, eyes wide because the predator that hunted them was now prey. Vultures were circling overhead already, not because they knew who would die, but because they knew something big was happening. Even the hippos had gone quiet for a moment, heads raised, nostrils flaring. Nobody moved. Everybody listened to the sounds of water and struggle, and a lion's breath being stolen. Sefu fought like a king falling off his throne. He jammed both front paws into the crocodile's head area, trying to find the eyes. He clawed wildly, not elegant now, just desperate. He managed to hook a claw into something soft. Nyoka's eye. The crocodile's head jerked. For the first time, Nyoka reacted, not by letting go, but by tightening. Sefu's claw ripped back, and dark blood mixed into the water. That should have been the moment the lion escaped. But Nyoka was too old to be surprised by pain. Nyoka had survived lions before. He had survived hippos. He had survived drought seasons and floods. He had survived humans too, probably. So he did the one thing that turned the whole fight. He changed angles. Instead of dragging Sefu deeper into the main current, he pulled him sideways toward a submerged root shelf under the bank, an underwater ledge that animals didn't know about. Nayoka used it like an anchor. Sefu's body slammed against it underwater, and the lion's head went under again. Longer this time. The lionesses on the bank began to scream, not roars, those short, angry lioness calls that sound like panic wrapped in rage. One lioness stepped into the water, just 2 paws, then stopped like her nerves caught fire. The other stayed back, pacing, eyes locked, unable to help, and the cubs started wailing. That sound, young lions crying, it's different. It doesn't sound dangerous. It sounds broken. Now here's the twist nobody expected. The hippos moved. At first it was subtle, a big head rising closer, a snort, a deep grunt. Hippos don't like chaos at their water, not because they care about lions, because they care about control. A fight near their space is a threat. It draws crocodiles. It draws panic herds that might stampede into them. It draws danger. One of the biggest hippos in the pod, a heavy bull with scars along his back, turned toward the struggle. He opened his mouth in a wide, pink warning display, showing tusks like curved knives. Then he charged. You don't understand hippo speed until you see it. They look like rocks until they move, and then they're fast in a way that doesn't match their size. The hippo surged through the water, pushing a wave ahead of him. Nayoka felt it. Crocodiles are sensitive to vibrations. Water tells them stories. Nayoka tightened his hold and tried to pull Sefu away from the oncoming mass. But the hippo didn't aim for the lion. He aimed for the crocodile. Because the crocodile was the thing disturbing his river, the hippo slammed down with his head and chest, and the water erupted like a bomb. For a split second, Sefu's leg came free. Not fully, but enough that the lion could pull his knee up and get leverage. Sefu did something lions don't usually get to do in crocodile fights. He found the bank, his front claws hooked into the sand and roots, his chest scraped up out of the water. He dragged himself like a man crawling out of a flood. Nayoka snapped again, trying to re-grip higher, and Sefu, shaking, soaked, roaring like his lungs were on fire, turned his head and bit down on Nayoka's snout. Not the top armor, the side, where the scales are thinner. Sefu's teeth clamped hard, and for a second the crocodile and the lion were connected like 2 nightmares stuck together. The hippo surged again, swinging his head. Nayoka finally let go, not because he was defeated, because he wasn't stupid. A hippo can crush a crocodile's ribs. It can bite a croc in half. Hippos kill without eating. They kill to protect space. Nayoka slid backward into deeper water, tail flicking, vanishing like a shadow that decided to wait for a better chance. Sefu didn't celebrate. He crawled onto land and collapsed. His body heaved. Water poured off his mane. His eyes blinked slowly like he was trying to convince himself he was still alive. The lionesses rushed to him and sniffed his leg. One licked his face, quick and nervous. The cubs came closer, still crying, touching his mane with tiny paws like they needed proof he was real. And the Savannah stayed still for a moment longer, because they had just watched something that didn't fit the normal story. They had watched a lion, an animal that makes everything else run, get grabbed like prey. They had watched him almost disappear, and they had watched him survive. But survival isn't always a win. When Sefu stood up, his leg didn't work right. Not the limp leg, the other. The crocodile bite had crushed deep. The leg shook under him like a weak branch. He tried to take a step. He nearly fell. The lionesses looked around fast, ears twitching, because in the wild, weakness spreads through the air like blood. And the first to smell it weren't the baboons. It wasn't another lion. It was hyenas. You didn't see them at first. You heard them. That distant laugh that doesn't sound like joy. It sounds like hunger with a voice. One hyena appeared at the edge of the grass, then another, then 5 more. They stayed far enough away to be safe, but close enough to make it clear. We saw everything. We were watching too. Sefu lifted his head and tried to roar, but his roar came out rough, broken at the end. He was exhausted. His body had just fought water, teeth and panic. The lionesses stepped forward as a line, tails stiff, faces hard. They roared back, and for now the hyenas kept their distance. But Moses, the driver watching from the vehicle, knew the truth. Today wasn't the end. Today was the beginning of a new problem. Because a lion who can't run, can't hunt well. A lion who can't hunt well becomes a lion who loses control. And the savannah never forgets when a king bleeds. Sefu limped away from the river with his family behind him. Slow, every step looked painful. The cubs kept glancing back at the water like it had eyes. And maybe it did, because beneath the surface, Nyoka didn't leave the bend. He simply sank down again, resting in the mud where the water cooled his body and hid his shape. One cloudy eye open, waiting, not for the lion, not anymore. Nyoka had already learned something too. A lion in the river is dangerous, but a wounded lion near the river, that's a story that might come back around. And that's why the savannah watched in shock. Not just because a crocodile attacked a lion, but because for a few terrifying minutes, every animal there saw the truth they try not to think about. Even the strongest can be pulled under. Even the king can lose his breath. And sometimes, the only reason he comes back up is because something else, something even meaner, decided it wanted the river quiet again. Now I want to ask you something. If you were that lioness on the bank, hearing your male drowning, would you jump in and risk your life? Or would you do what most animals do and freeze? Because the water isn't your world,